Welcome everyone to another edition of Play It Through, and on this edition it's Deep Duck Trouble, brought to us by Sega for the Sega Game Gear. Deep Duck Trouble is one of the many Donald Duck games created by Sega along with Quackshot and the Lucky Dime Caper. The game features Donald Duck traveling around the world to get rid of a curse that's put on his Uncle Scrooge after he gets a pendant that came from an ancient tomb. Deep Duck Trouble was released not only for the Sega Game Gear, it was also released for the Master System, and it's a great platformer on any of those platforms. While Deep Duck Trouble may not be as memorable as the Quackshot game, it's still a very fun Disney-Sega collaboration. So here we go with Deep Duck Trouble for the Sega Game Gear. After finding out the opening story and all about the pendant and how Uncle Scrooge has ballooned up like a balloon, we then get to our main title screen where we see Deep Duck Trouble starring Donald Duck, before the pendant ends up falling down and we get a pretty humorous Donald Duck expression. Once the game begins, you can then select which stage you want to start with, selecting from all the different levels surrounding the main island of the game. The first stage we're going to be going to is Level 1, the Jungle. You can see graphically it's actually pretty good for a Sega Game Gear game, and definitely has fluent animation. Your health is located in the bottom left corner, represented by diamonds in this game, which is a little bit different from the other Sega Disney games. Instead of using a weapon as your main force of attacking enemies, in this one it's more of a traditional platformer, having Donald Duck being able to jump on enemies in order to take care of them. He can also kick open boxes to grab different items, including the chili like he uses in Quackshot, in order to get a big burst of anger, which allows him to charge forward and take out enemies. Over here, jump on top of the ostriches and keep jumping between them, and don't accidentally fall down in the gap between them as they run very fast by. After the stampede gets done running by, continue on the stage watching out for the mole as well as this caterpillar, which you can use this block to kick. Wait for the block to come back over to the left and then use it in order to move yourself over to the right side. Here we can grab another chili and then run off screen to complete the area. Next up, we move on to scene number 2 here in the jungle, and this one is much more filled with a traditional jungle theme, as we have large trees that are in the background. Use the block at the beginning and kick it in order to make the vine fall down so you can climb up and get to the branches above. At the beginning of this area, climb up these trees and then use the vines in order to get across the gap. Besides the pepper and the health items, you can also find bags of money and diamonds for extra points, as well as once in a while you will find a picture of Donald. If you're able to find one of these, you'll end up getting an extra life. Remember also, you can kick any of the yellow blocks in the game and actually take out enemies using them. There's also regular boxes, as you've seen, that you can actually hit in order to get items. Instead of climbing up here, I'm actually able to just go across the spikes taking a little bit of damage, and I actually get a health replenishment item right past the spikes, so it's a little bit quicker just to stay on the ground, but you will take some hits. When we make it to the right, we see this giant gorilla pop out of the ground, and it's time for the boss battle of this area. Instead of actually fighting a traditional boss, our goal here is just to keep running long enough, and eventually we'll end up completing the area. You can speed up and slow down while you control Donald. Just be sure to jump over the giant amounts of spikes and watch out for the projectiles that are going to fall from the top. Also be sure to jump up so you can get to the higher ledges so you don't end up getting squashed as the screen scrolls. Near the end of this area, you will have a few of the spike pits, so be careful and have your finger on the jump button to make sure you're able to get over these. After 2 spike pits pretty much in a row, the gorilla will end up running into a tree and you've completed the level. The second level we're going to be traveling to is the inlet, and we start off with an underwater area. Controlling Donald underwater is pretty easy, being able to actually swim over most of the enemies here. Be careful of the fish as well as the jellyfish that are going to come towards you. After quite a large open area, you'll come to a stop and you'll actually move on to the second screen of this area. During here, you have the giant eels that are going to try to hit you, so be careful, duck underneath them if you need to, and make it to the other side. When you make it over here, you can go up to grab some extra items, but our main path is going to be going down. Once you do so, be very careful of the fish that dart out of the walls when you swim near them. The fish in the walls here will end up sucking you towards them when they open their mouth, so be very careful here. You can accidentally be pulled or pushed into the spikes depending upon whether or not the fish's mouth is open or closed. Over here, the water will end up pushing you upwards to the next area, but be very careful because there's more of those darting fish as soon as you get to the top. When you make it down here, you'll see the outline of a sunken ship and you've completed the first area of the underwater stage. As you begin the sunken ship area, swim underneath here and kick the block out of the way to move on. Watch out for these pots that have the clams in them, because when you swim near them, they will end up popping up and trying to grab you. If you swim high enough above them, they won't even be able to grab you, but a few of them you will have to swim relatively close to, so you'll have to wait a few seconds. Swim up here, watching out for the fish, and then make your way into this area. Be careful because you can see there's a few portholes that still have glass in them, and when you swim near them, the glass will actually fall down. Swim in the middle here, and then use this block in order to take out this creature. When you throw it at the creature, he'll end up spitting it out, and it'll go back and forth between them until it breaks down the wall for you to be able to make it to the next area. When you make it up here, our goal is actually the block on the left side, but if you want to grab yourself an extra diamond, you can work your way over to the right here and grab it, before we end up going back to the left and kick the block. Jump up here and kick this box, you'll end up breaking the hole into the ceiling area and it'll fill up with water, allowing you to go into the hole on the far right side. Once again here, we'll have to use the creatures in order to make this block go into the wall on the right, so it can break it open and allow us to continue. Here, watch out for the portholes as we make our way over to the right, and we get ready for the boss battle of this stage. For the boss chase of the underwater stage, we have a giant shark following us below. We have to maneuver our ways through the openings of the cave area so we can work our way back up to the surface and escape. Thankfully, as long as you swim high enough above, the shark won't actually be able to reach you. As you make it higher into the area, there will be spikes along the ceiling, so you'll have to be really quick when pressing the direction buttons in order to escape them. But thankfully we have 3 hits on our health, so we should have plenty of health in order to escape this area. After you make it to the open area, you reach the surface and you have escaped level 2. The third level we're traveling to is the volcano stage, and as soon as we start off inside this cave, a few bats will come our way, so be careful and don't accidentally jump up into them. One of the main threats in this area are going to be the moles in the ground that pop up and end up throwing rocks your way. If you're pretty quick, you can actually jump on top of their heads before they're even able to throw the rocks at you. Also be careful of the grasshopper enemies that bounce back and forth on a platform as they'll try to get in your way. In this area, work your way down, watching out for the openings because bats will try to fly at you. You may either have to stay above on a certain platform or just duck underneath the bat when he goes overhead. Over to the right, watch out for the 2 bats and then start climbing up the other way. It's just like the way we were working our way down, but now we have to work our way up. Kick this block into the wall and you end up getting a money bag. As the area starts to shake, rocks will start to fall from the ceiling, so you'll have to watch out for them as well. Here, wait for the flame to dissipate and you'll be able to stand on the rock in order to get to the higher platform. Then jump onto the moving rock on the spikes, and just keep riding this along so you can make it over the large amount of spikes in the area. Drop down here and actually kick the block out of the way so you can continue rolling on top of the giant rock. Once you make it down here though, jump off the rock and work over to the right, grabbing the pepper along the way to finish the area and complete the first scene of level 3. In the second scene, there's lots of lava for us to accidentally fall into, so you'll have to jump along the moving rocks in order to make it across the gaps of lava. Just like before, wait for the fire to dissipate and then jump to the rock, and then you can make it to this opening in the cave to the right. Inside here, little fireballs will actually be moving around here in a wave-like pattern. Thankfully, when they go up in the air for the most part, you'll easily make it under them. When you come out of the cave, you'll be into another new area of this place, once again jumping on the rocks, being sure to wait for the flame to dissipate so you can make it on top. Thankfully, in case you've taken some damage, you can grab a nice ice cream cone from the box, then ride across the rock in order to enter another cave. You'll come out here at the bottom, watching out for the flames that will pop out of the little bits of lava that you can see in openings. Watch out for this rock so you don't get crushed, and then jump along these moving up and down platforms on the lava itself in order to make it over. Over here, watch out for the swinging spider, and then drop down here, and then work over to the left to find the opening we saw at the beginning of this area. Inside here, the lava will quickly be rising, so you'll have to make it over the platforms very quickly, and jump onto the moving rocks so you can keep moving upwards. Thankfully, it doesn't move too fast. Even with Donald's slow movement speed, you shouldn't have too much trouble making it through. When you make it outside of the volcano, it's time for Donald Duck in another chase scene. You'll start off by running down the large slope here of the mountain trying to make your way to the bottom. While doing so, you'll have to avoid all the many boulders that are going to try to hit you as you do so. The hardest parts are definitely jumping to the giant rocks in the middle of lava, while also trying to jump again immediately to make it to the other side. Other than that, for the most part, just stay a little bit away from the left and right side of the screen so you can see where most of the boulders spawn, and you'll be able to easily get the jump on them. When you make it to the bottom, the last rock that's chasing us will end up breaking and giving us the item we need, and we can move on to the fourth stage. Level number 4 is the mountain area known as the Valley. Watch out for the bee that as soon as you spawn into the level, he'll try to dart down towards you in a diagonal direction. For the most part, you have bees that will actually just go overhead, and you'll have other ones that will try to dart towards you, sometimes being really a pain to try to avoid them because when you land on a platform, they seem to immediately spawn, and Donald's slow movement sometimes can end up causing you to take a hit. You'll have to use boosts of air below you in order to boost yourself upwards to higher platforms. Over here, you'll have to wait for these logs to start dropping down the waterfall, and then you can actually work your way up them in order to get above. Just be careful that a mountain goat doesn't end up landing on your head when you reach the top of the waterfall. Thankfully though, there is an ice cream to pick up so you can replenish some of your health. When you make it to the top of this area, we'll move on to the second part of the mountain. As we make it up, we now see that the top of the mountain area is actually snow-filled, so this adds a little bit of extra peril that we'll have to deal with. Over here, you'll actually have to use this rock and kick it up into the mountain, and it ends up causing the snow to fall that you can then jump on and get above. Once again, use the snow that you can break from here in order to jump up to the platforms to continue upwards up the mountain. During the segment though, always be careful of the mountain goats that are going to try to land on you as you work your way up the higher platforms. Over here to the right, we complete the first scene of level number 4. When you walk over to the right, the snow will end up falling, causing you to fall down into the area below. Inside, you'll be inside a giant ice cave, and you'll immediately land on top of a Yeti enemy. Be careful of ice that will actually fall down from the ceiling, causing ice blocks to form, but of course they can also hurt you if they land directly on top of you. Jump on this block and you can actually use it to get yourself over to the left side if you want. Just be careful that you don't end up getting hit by it like I did. Use the ice block that forms from the ice strip in order to take out the Yeti before heading down here. When down here, use the block in order to break the spikes above so you can jump over this icy-filled water. Over here, watch out for the giant narwhal and kick the ice and end up launching an ice block on top of its spike, and that'll allow you to actually walk over to the right. Here we can grab ourselves a chili and use that to run underneath these spikes so we can end up avoid taking damage from them. You'll need to use that pepper because I don't think there's any other way to get under those spikes. Drop down here and be very careful because the narwhal will pop out of the water below, causing an ice block to rise and go into the ceiling. Of course, this can end up hurting you if you end up staying on it and not ducking, and then end up causing yourself to get hit by spikes. Here we'll once again have to use ice blocks on the narwhal's horn in order to actually continue over. During this segment, ride along this ice block and be sure to duck down when you hit the ramps so you don't end up hitting your head on the spikes. You'll also have to jump over a few platforms while also doing this area. Over here you can jump up in case you want to grab some extra items or just continue along the water surface below, just being sure to duck so you don't hit the spikes and then make it to the next segment. At the beginning of this area, continue jumping up and watching out for the Yetis as you make your way up the ice platforms. You'll have to use ice blocks in order to boost yourself a little bit so you can continue up. Over here, wait for the ice block to form and then jump up to one of the snowballs that fall so you can make it over into the boss chase for the mountain stage. This giant bird ends up picking Donald up and takes him above to another area. After he comes back to try to grab Donald again, Donald starts running. And just like the other areas, you'll have to jump over gaps and be careful not to get hit by the boss itself, or else you'll end up losing health and possibly a life. While the gaps are pretty large, as long as you're continuing to run and hold the right button when you make the jumps, you shouldn't have any issue being able to get over these gaps. When you make it to the bottom, you'll end up hitting this rock and the bird will jump down and end up getting hit by the geyser that spews upwards, giving us our item and we can move on to the 5th level of the game. After completing the first 4 levels, we can now go to the 5th level, the Shrine. At the beginning of the shrine, jump to the platforms on the water and be careful of the fish that try to jump up and bite you. Over here, kick the block into the spikes, wait for it to come back, and then ride it across to the other side. As you can see, since the water is flowing here, you'll have to actually put a little extra pressure on Donald to keep moving, so you don't end up getting sucked down to the hole. Since the water is moving, but rather slowly to the right, we'll end up ducking down here and ride it across so we can get underneath the spikes. Be careful of the spider at the end, as well as the fish that's in the water itself. You then break open the next hole and continue riding across. In this room, work your way up the ramps, watching out for the bugs on the ground as well as the spiders that are going to try to crawl down into you. You can grab some extra items if you do need the health along the way before reaching the top. Once again, use this block in order to go over the giant amount of spikes, and you can grab yourself a diamond when you make it to the other side. In here, we have to work our way down the slopes, being careful not to land in too many of the spikes while doing so. It can be really tough because jumping on the slope is a little bit tricky. When you land on this platform, those spikes will start immediately spawning coming towards you, so move yourself off the platform quickly. In the next room, grab yourself the pepper and then break down the blocks in order to complete the first scene of level number 5. In the next area, watch out for the ghost enemies. When they're just floating around as a little sheet, they won't be able to hurt you, but when they pop up, you can actually then jump on their head and they actually can damage you. Over here to the right, jump on this moving platform and start riding it down. Be very careful of the flaming gargoyle heads in the walls that shoot fireballs at you. Here, ride across the block and then continue over to the left side. Be careful of the fireball and kick this block out of the way so you can drop down in the middle. Drop down here and start riding on this platform, being sure to jump up to the platform above so you can actually wait for it to get over to you. Over at the end, kick the block and then jump on it one last time so you can actually make it over to the far right. Over here, you'll see the floor will actually start lighting up. You can only stand on the floor at the parts that are lit up during that time. The other areas, you'll end up just falling down to the pit below, losing a life. On this platform, you do have a few statues trying to poke you with tridents, so be very careful, and just stay on the far right or left of the platform, depending upon what side the statue's on, so you can end up not getting poked. Here, wait for the flame to go out, and then you can actually jump on the platform. The only problem, of course, is when the flame's out, the lights end up going out, and this will actually allow the ghosts that are flying by to hurt you. In the next segment, it can be a little bit tricky. This is probably one of the tougher areas of the game. Watch out for the ghost enemies, and then make a long jump to this platform. Use the block in order to cause the arrow to turn. Then wait for the platform to come back over to you. Drop down to the left one, and be sure that the other one's still on screen with you as you ride the bottom one across, so that it makes it across to the other side before you end up falling off the bottom platform. Ride this one across to the left and then get over to the platform as it'll actually break apart, allowing you to fall down into the area below. You'll now be riding on the log as you move across the water. This area can be tricky because it's actually a maze. If you don't go the right direction, you'll end up just looping back around. Ride the log and actually ride it down, being sure to jump to this platform as the other one falls so you don't end up making it into the pit. Then use these slopes to slowly ride down so you don't end up falling down to the pit, and then jump to this log. Ride this one across and make a large jump all the way over to the right to make it to another log. Here, once again, jump over and actually use the slopes again in order to work your way down. You'll have to make another large jump to a log over a large gap when you reach the end of the water area. Then, jump off and you're finally on solid land again and continue over to the right in order to complete round number 5. It's now time for the final boss battle of the game. The final level of the game is the Shrine. Be careful of the floating gargoyle heads. The first two will just go overhead, but you actually can take out the next two by jumping on them as they spit fireballs. Once you get past them, it's actually now time for the final boss. The boss will float up into the air and then move back and forth, eventually stopping and causing a block to form on the bottom. Just be careful not to get into the way of the beam that forms the block. Once the block is formed and he stops shooting the laser, kick the block up towards him to actually damage him. You can also get hit by the little rocks that end up spewing from the sides every time he forms one block. Also be careful that once in a while, instead of doing the block, he'll end up causing 4 projectiles to go out, so be sure to get in between them or be far enough away so they end up not hitting you. After about 5 hits, he ends up floating upwards and it's time for the second part of the boss fight. He'll keep teleporting to either the left, right, or middle of the screen. When he does so, he'll end up either launching projectiles at you that you'll have to stand in between, or does a big circle attack, causing all the projectiles to kind of form in the middle above his hands. For the spread shot, just stay on the right or left side of it so you can get in between those far right and left shots, and for the circle one, just be sure to hit him immediately after he spawns, because this will allow you to hit him and stop the circle from even getting going. Once you deliver the final hit to him, you can sit back and enjoy the ending to Deep Duck Trouble. So even after all that big adventure of going through all these areas and finding all the cursed artifacts to save Uncle Scrooge, Donald didn't learn the lesson of these cursed artifacts and ends up putting the crown on his head, causing him to balloon up just like Scrooge did at the beginning, and now Uncle Scrooge and the nephews end up going on their own adventure. While Deep Duck Trouble is nowhere near as memorable or as good as a game as Quackshot, it's still a very fun to play platformer on the handheld, as well as the original Sega Master System. As the credits reach their end, you end up getting your end screen as well as your total score before the game ends up resetting and you can play the fun all over again. And with that, that's going to wrap up this edition of Play It Through. I'd like to thank you for watching, and of course, I hope you enjoy.